Yo, what's going down, everybody? Welcome to Show Me the Meaning, Wisecrack's movie podcast.
Show me a good time!
Show me a good time.
The third to last episode of Show Me the Meaning!
Oh, Ryan, why?
I gotta tell the people, Austin, it's alright, you know, all good things come to an end. You said we should tell it organically. This is the way to do it.
Fucking A. Yeah, okay, so here's the deal. We have 3 episodes left in this. Was this been 5 years, bro?
Dude,
have we done this for 5 years?
5 years, and I've met you, I think, in person once. Is that correct?
That's right. One time. I know. You were much taller than I thought you would be.
Yeah.
You and Jared were actually much taller than I thought you would be. Yeah, I mean, I'm 6 feet tall, and both of you are over 6 feet. I was like, oh, okay, you guys are taller than I expected.
Than I anticipated.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everybody. So here's the deal. We'll give a full explanation at the end of this podcast, but we just wanted to say at the outright, just to kind of build up some steam and momentum, invite you to come and freaking stick with us and party with us as we kind of wind down what is the end of an era, right? We have 3 episodes left. We're going to finish out March, and then Show Me the Meaning as a podcast is going to be placed into the archives, the annals of history. But we'll explain more the annals of history. But we'll explain more at the end. So make sure you stick around for that. We don't want to belabor the point because we want to get into talking about what we do best. Let's talk about freaking movies, Ryan. Let's talk about a movie in particular. Let's talk about Good Time. That's right. We're going to be talking about Good Time, the Safdie brothers film from 2017, starring Robert Pattinson, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Benny Safdie. And, so I guess first, as always, we go around and we do a first impression. So, Ryan, was this your choice, by the way, or was this Raymond's choice?
I'm sure it was on mine, but I can see it being on Raymond's, too.
Okay, so first impressions. What was it like first time you saw it? What's it been like on repeated viewings, et cetera, et cetera? Let's get into it.
All right, dude. I mean, this movie, the first time I saw it, I saw it at the Los Feliz 3 in L.A., pretty small theater.
Love that theater.
It's great, and I was just blown away is the best way to put it. Like, it was everything I wanted in a movie, and I would like to underline that 10 times, okay? These guys just, I could tell from the jump that they knew how to make movies. They knew how to mix sound and, editing and video and I hope we get into the aesthetic a lot because a lot of what I love about this movie is the style, but it's not just style for style's sake. It's telling an amazing story, an amazing kinetic story that only cinema can tell with these, really, really well fleshed out characters, but in a just gripping, engaging tone, aesthetic, style, whatever you want to call it. It's amazing. And there's plenty of scenes. Almost every scene of this movie blows me away. And then watching it again, I've kind of been bummed lately about movies, and I've been on a bunch of movie podcasts lately, including this one. I feel like the last 5 movies have just either been lukewarm or kind of or I actively hated, like the Batman or something. Like I'm just nothing's really been pumps me up. Like, oh man, this is what I go to the movies for. This is why I love the movies, and this is one of those movies. This is probably the last big one of those where I was just like, it just reinvigorates me and inspires me, and it's like not anyone can make this movie because there's lots of but it is a lower budget affair, and we can talk about the making of the film too. So that's kind of inspirational, and their whole story is great, and they're to me like the saviors of cinema right now. I don't want to pump them up too much, and but yeah, them and Ari Aster and Jordan Peele are like. And maybe like Greta Gerwig are like to me the most, I don't know, refreshing young filmmakers out there today. Voices today.
Were you familiar with the Safdies before you saw Good Time, or was this your intro to them?
Good Time was my intro to them, and then like the credits are rolling, and it's like executive produced by Martin Scorsese, and I'm like, what the fuck? What have I missed? Where do these guys come from? The one entry point into their filmography it's not even their filmography, but their closest collaborator, I forget his name, I'll look it up here in a second, but they're the guy who co-edits their movies and co-writes their movies, Bernstein or something like that. He made a film.
Yeah, Ronald Bronstein.
Ronald Bronstein. Anyway, that guy, he's an older guy than them, and he made a movie that I saw twice in film school, and I hated it. Okay, and I would love to watch that again today because I think it's called Negative Land.
Frownland?
Frownland, yes.
Frownland. Yeah,
it is a polarizing movie, but it's and you can tell how the Safdies and him, are kindred spirits. But like I remember, I think I just saw it not in I wasn't as intelligent and movie articulate as I am now. I probably would enjoy it more, but it definitely, I remember seeing it at South by, fucking hating it, but I just was like, I'm here, I'm gonna watch it, and then being in a film class and they go, hey, we're gonna watch this movie called Frownland, and I go, you're kidding me, not this movie again. But, and then it cracks me out that they're like his biggest collaborator. Anyway, I'm rambling, but yeah, I had never seen,
no, that's good.
I'd never seen their original movie about the I forget.
Heaven Knows What?
Yeah,
or whatever.
that one.
And then there's Daddy Longlegs.
Yeah, I've never seen. I have not seen their small movies. I've only seen their two big mainstream movies. But I love them.
Yeah, same. So yeah, for me, they'd been on my radar in terms of like when you just like try to search for who are like fresh new voices in a particular artistic genre, right? So people were talking about them coming out of the festival circuit, and it was kind of like these are the up and comers to watch, right? And there was something fresh about what they did. But the first thing that I actually saw, the first full thing that I actually saw was actually Uncut Gems. I had seen bits and pieces of Good Time, and I had like read quite a bit about it, and I'd watched clips of it and analyses, but I'd never watched the full thing until after Uncut Gems. And I think for me, like my first impression was the good is their ability to create tension, pace. Their visual and sonic aesthetic, I think, is amazing. Like the synth. And then also the colors, there's something very retro. Matter of fact, the film starts off, I felt like it was 1980s, like there's something that they kind of just did about mood that kind of pulled me into like, oh, this is how people used to make movies. And I know that that's like nostalgic maybe, like we old guys always say that, right? Like they just don't make them like they used to. But I've been complaining a lot lately.
Grittier than like a kind of a movie from another time, like the new Hollywood era of the 70s and 80s, for sure.
It does. And like even the opening establishing shots of New York for some reason just felt a little different than and maybe it's because you've got like this synth score and then like the text on the screen and the way that they do the opening credits is different, right? There's just something fun that they're doing with the medium, even with these little tweaks that immediately draws me in. And then with Uncut Gems and Good Time, both of those films explore time, like the compression of time, and like when the fucking forces are coming against you, like you gotta make decisions, and sometimes the decisions you make are bad decisions. I had a friend one time a long time ago say that like sometimes your decisions make decisions for you, and that's what these films to me are all about. Like you don't make the decision, but the decisions that you make the decisions. And I heard like some people were complaining, they're like, what's the fucking moral of this movie in Good Time? Like there's just no like good moral. I'm like, it's just fucking the chaos of time and decision making.
That's your takeaway from the movie is the chaos of time.
Fuck, dude. You make a decision, and then the next thing you know, like 20 hours later, you're trapped, and you look back, and you're like, how the fuck did I get here? But it's just because you've just been in, like, making decisions, survival, and it's almost like you're behind. Like, time is, like, ahead of you almost, and you're, like, behind it, trying to keep up constantly. And that creates this, like, anxiety as you're watching it, right? And you're like, oh, fuck, and then you find out that it's, like, he doesn't rescue his brother from the hospital, but it's some random dude, and then he gets sucked into that, and you're like, that's his decisions making decisions for him, right? Like oh, fuck, he's, like, trapped in a situation that he didn't choose to be in, right? And I think they get that really well, and that's interesting. I will say this, and I think this is something that can open up a really broad conversation, and I tweeted about it just to ask people's opinions on it. We live in a time where we are really questioning casting, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're trying to pay attention to diverse experiences and give voice to diverse expressions. Watching this film, knowing that Benny Safdie does not have cognitive disabilities, but playing that character, it did put a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth.
Really?
Just from the beginning.
So, that's a very interesting. We definitely should tackle this because that was actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That was the most interesting part of my second watch here. right? Because when I watched the first time, you know, I had no clue who these people were and who he was, and I legitimately
I knew what Josh Safdie looked like. I didn't know what Benny Safdie looked like, so I didn't even know that was him.
But you did know, apparently, while you watched the movie, that he did not have cognitive disabilities.
We googled it during, because my girl was like,
"Oh, you son of a bitch!"
Like, oh my. I know. So then it threw me off, because that opening scene, I was like so interesting, and then it threw me off for the rest of the movie.
You're in the middle of the movie.
I know.
Austin, shame him, everybody out there.
I know.
Listening.
I know.
So yeah, I mean, I'm watching the fucking movie, and I'm going, wow, how did they get this actor? You know, how did they get? Who is this? And I did think during the movie, I'm like I was wondering. I mean, I don't know if that just is proving how stupid I am and gullible, but like I thought and was like, there's no. By the end of it, I was for sure that he just did, you know, he was, you know, had actual cognitive disabilities. Is that the right term for it?
Yeah.
But yeah. So when the second time I'm watching it, I'm definitely watching it through the lens of having seen him in other stuff, having seen fucking him in Licorice Pizza, seen him in interviews, and I'm like, whoa. I was kind of just more impressed with the performance, and then yeah, there is the question of like, okay, what are the ethics of this? And I have heard him talk about it in interviews, and I do, you know, essentially see what they're coming from. Like, you can't put somebody like that in this in a situation like, I mean, like this, like you said, an anxiety-inducing, intense shoot that requires what it required, right? Like that would be bad and unethical to some degree.
Yeah, let's talk about that on the other side of me kind of reading a synopsis, because they do have an explanation and they have a rationality. And then I even tried to do some digging. I was really looking for like some real thoughtful think pieces, and I couldn't find too many. I saw a lot of think pieces about the film and its dealings with race and stuff like that, and then like class and crime and justice and all these different things, but I didn't find too many dealing with the issue of like disability theory. So if people are out there that are listening, if they know of any really interesting think pieces, or if they have really good takes on it, friggin' let us know, you know, contact us and send that stuff in, because I'm curious about this. But okay, so before we start kind of peeling this thing apart, looking at the aesthetics, looking at what they do well, and then maybe even talking a bit more about this issue, let me just do a quick plot read, and then we'll get in on the other side. Okay. So Nick sits uncomfortably in a court-ordered therapy session where he talks about the time that he had a violent incident with his grandmother. He is mentally handicapped, although I would say cognitively disabled, and enough not to fully grasp anger management or the social repercussions for his actions. Nick's brother Connie bursts in and, to the displeasure of the therapist, forces Nick out of the room. The brothers then decide to rob a New York City bank for $65,000. While fleeing in a taxi, the dye pack explodes in a money bag, causing the driver to crash, and Connie and Nick have to run away on foot, and they try to wash off all the dye from their clothes and everything like that. Stopped by the police, Nick panics and runs, but is arrested and sent to Rikers Island, while Connie escapes. Now, Connie attempts to secure a bail bond, but he needs $10,000 more to get Nick out of jail, and the money, because it's been all stained by the dye pack exploding, is not able to be exchanged, so he has to convince his girlfriend Corey to pay with her mother's credit cards, but her mother cancels the cards, so they can't get him out that way. Connie then learns that Nick's been hospitalized after a fight with an inmate, so Connie tries to break him out of a hospital, unconscious and all bandaged up all over his face and stuff, and he convinces a woman to let them stay in her house with her 16-year-old granddaughter, Crystal. Now, while they're watching TV, the news shows a photo of Connie's face, but to distract Crystal, he starts kissing her, and then he hears screams from the other room while they're kissing, and Connie realizes that the man he broke out of the hospital is not actually Nick, but another man who was released on parole named Ray. And so the three of them then drive to the Adventureland amusement park, where Ray stowed a bottle of LSD solution worth several $1,000s and a bag of stolen money before he ran from the police and got hurt himself by jumping out of a car. Searching for the money, Connie and Ray uncover the bottle of LSD and are discovered by a security guard. Connie beats the living crap out of him, and then as police arrive, Connie steals the man's uniform and Ray pours LSD, like a shitload of LSD, down the man's throat to make him totally incoherent. Connie convinces the police I was watching that and I was like, dude, that is so fucked. But okay, so Connie convinces the police that the guard was the intruder and destroys a hard drive containing all the security footage. So police arrest Crystal as well as she waits outside because she can't really explain what she's doing there. Now, Ray and Connie break into the guard's high-rise apartment. The guard has a pit bull that Connie lets smell the guard's jacket so that they let him in. And Ray begins drinking, and Connie tells him that he's a leech on society, leading to a heated argument. Then at Connie's insistence, Ray calls his criminal friend Caliph to buy back the LSD so that they can get the bail money. Now, when Caliph arrives, Connie demands $15,000. Caliph agrees, but he tells Ray that he's really going to retrieve a firearm and come back and kill Connie. Now, after Caliph leaves, Connie senses danger and leaves with the acid. As he made it to the hallway, or as he makes it to the hallway, Ray attacks him in order to prevent him from leaving, but then the dog attacks Ray, giving Connie the opportunity to flee with the drugs. So Ray goes back to the room, calls Caliph, but when he looks over the balcony, he sees Connie getting caught by the police. So Ray attempts to escape from a window, but falls to his death. Ow. Meanwhile, Connie is thrown into the back of a police car, thinking about everything that has transpired. And the film ends with Nick in a therapy class, beginning to participate in a group activity, with his therapist inferring that Connie has confessed and taken responsibility for his role in the bank robbery, and that was a good thing. End of movie. All right, but now it's time to give a shout out to our sponsor of this week's episode, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can connect with other like-minded people and creatives, and where you can explore projects that you are passionate about. The thing that makes Skillshare so cool is that you can unleash your creativity and you can pursue your passions right from the convenience of your own home, or your car, or your office, or your cabin in the woods, or an airplane, or wherever it is that you happen to be. They offer thousands of classes for creative and curious people on topics like iPhone photography, drone filming, editing, digital design, art activism, fine art, print art, all the arts, all the creative things, anything that you can really imagine that you would want to do in the creative sphere. Skillshare has something for you. So if you want to explore your creativity and you want to connect with some really cool people, make sure to go to Skillshare.com/SMTM and you get a free trial of their premium membership. That's Skillshare.com/SMTM and you get a free trial of their premium membership. Skillshare.com/SMTM or click the link down below. All right, back to the show. All right, okay, so let's start packing this film apart. First things first, let's start talking about the aesthetic of this film.
Yeah.
That's something that you really wanted to get into. So lead the way. What is like your favorite thing about the aesthetic of this film?
Well, okay. So obviously they shoot on film, okay? And I think we should talk about
Which
this.
Which is great. It looks great. It looks fucking
because
great.
I have gone back and forth in my life on how much I care about this, right? You know, when I'm growing up and like, oh, I'm going through film school. Oh, it's got to be film, man. That's the way to do it. But I slowly got kind of talked into like, oh, you can absolutely make digital stuff either look like film enough or whatever, and it's very, very useful in other ways. So I kind of forever have not really given a shit. You can tell a cool story with it. But man, I think it goes back to I haven't been excited about that many movies lately, and then you watch this, and every frame of this is just like amazing to watch and look at, and it's like fucking Robert Pattinson, but it's in this gritty film, and I'm like, it has to be part of the subconscious aesthetic of film that is contributing to this. It just has to be, and there really seems to be no actual substitute. I rarely see a movie that I'm like, wow, that looks like it was shot on film, and then I go back and I find that it was shot on digital. There's maybe a couple like Collateral or something, the Michael Mann movie that has this kind of weird grainy aesthetic, but was totally shot on digital. There's not many like that, So I absolutely think that there's something to that. Now I've been reprogrammed to my formal idea.
Right. Do you think that it's because you only have a limited capacity? With digital, you can just fucking hit record, keep it going. You can go. With film, you've got to set up. You've got to know. You've got to have a little bit more intentionality with what you're doing.
No, I don't think that's it because I mean, there is something to be said for that, like in the terms of just letting it go and Judd Apatow shooting 10 million fucking feet of film and then it just showing in the final product, even though it is on film, but. And yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Getting the, whatever you want to call it, the limitations of and stuff, and using that to your advantage. What I'm talking about, there's this one, I forgot who said it. I think it was Walter Merce, the famous editor, but he says, like, if you show a room and you shoot it on film and you show a chair in an empty room, your mind is like something, what is about to happen, what is going, this is telling a story. It's like you're waiting for something to happen to the chair. And then if you shoot it on digital, you're sitting there and you're just seeing a chair in a room or something. I'm fucking up the quote. I should look it up. But basically, the two mediums, it is doing something to your brain. Somebody could probably explain it better than me. That is causing anticipation rather than just looking at the thing. Observation, I guess. I don't know.
I'm wondering why that is. Like, do you think there's something? Is it because, like, if you didn't know it was film, would it still have that effect? Like looking at the chair in the room?
I think that's what I'm saying, is that the medium has this subconscious effect that actually makes you more engaged with the image. And it doesn't matter if you know it; it just is working on you. It's the limitations of the craft.
Yeah.
That are helping it.
Here's my speculative theory as the philosopher trying to be like, I wonder what it is. I wonder if it's because digital looks so crisp that we don't have to do as much work to be invested in the image, whereas film, it kind of like pulls us in. It almost has like this seductive quality because it's not so crisp and clean, and so we almost have to do a little bit more work to get into it. Like there's something about the way that the light is hitting our eyes that draws us in a little bit more, that isn't the same when we're looking at a digitized image, which is a little bit crisper and cleaner, which gives us more of an immediate experience. And so our kind of like tendency to work isn't as heightened, and so it's just a little bit of an easier, like you just said, instead of like feeling like, ooh, what's gonna happen next, I'm being drawn in and I'm leaning forward looking at the filmic image. When I look at the digital image, it's like, oh, it's just present before me, something like that. That's what I'm wondering. I don't know.
Like when Ang Lee, the filmmaker, he was shooting in 210 frames a second in this insane
right.
with these insane cameras, and I was just listening to him talk because I respect him so much, and James Cameron and Peter Jackson were so on board with this shit. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds right. Like the future is these high frame rate, like you're right fucking there, And when I saw The Hobbit, I was just like, this sucks. Like we've complained about it on this before. It feels like you're there, but it feels like you're there on set watching a bunch of people in shitty costumes, because it's so realistic that you're literally, you don't want to have it be that realistic. A movie is supposed to draw you into a story, and you're like, it's this whole contract with the audience. Like, yeah, we know that this is fake, but we're trying to make you feel like you're there, but you don't want to really be there on set with them filming the thing. Right. It's stupid.
Exactly.
Everyone looks like an idiot.
Right. We need a distance. Yeah. We need a distance. We need a distance so that we can engage our imaginations, so we can participate. I fucking love it. This is why I like practical effects, because I kind of want to see the rubber suit. I kind of want to see the silicone on the face. I kind of want to see the fact, like, this is why I love the theater so much, because the theater, you have to do a lot of work to be like, hey, I'm imagining that they're at a train station, or I'm imagining that they're in a bedroom or whatever, right? But when it's so immediate and so presented, it really takes that effort away from us. Yeah, I dig that.
The realistic photography works best for documentaries and sports, especially, where it's just like, okay, yeah, you want to feel like you're there while it's happening, but that this narrative contract isn't involved. The other thing, you want the artificiality a little bit. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that because it does cause us to engage, and it's precisely what you said. It's that leaning forward, and if you're not constantly leaning forward, like what's going to happen next, but if you're kind of sitting back and you're just receiving, one, that just makes you a passive consumer of something, right? And it actually doesn't empower you. It's actually disempowering you, but also just in terms of like from entertainment perspective, I don't think we want to be so passive. I think we want to be like, oh shit, what's going to happen? I don't know how to feel. Like, oh my gosh. Like, so there's something about how, like, if we can use art to create ourselves as like active engagers, that I think has a lot of power,
Totally.
right? That has a lot of potency in one, just crafting people to be involved in the story, but then what it does is then it changes people, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to tell a story to affect people somehow, and so you'll have greater impact if you can suck them in a little bit more, and you can cause them to be more actively involved, rather than just being like, hey, here are some fucking sexy or sleek or cool or clear or clean images that we're just going to bombard you with.
Right.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
Exactly. I think we got to the bottom of film. The other,
we figured it out.
Yeah, I think we figured that out. We showed them the meeting. The other part of the aesthetic I'd like to get into too is the use of music, right? Because that was really when I knew we were on board. Because it starts with this amazing interview between Benny Safdie and his therapist, and you get literally, he's crying on camera in the first scene and stuff, which to me was powerful, But then all of a sudden, Robert Pattinson comes in against character and just is like, takes him out, and then the music starts, and we're getting this amazing intro, and I'm like, okay, wow, now I'm on board now. Like the juxtaposition of those two scenes was great, and the music starts and basically doesn't let up. It's this amazing synth score by their collaborator, I forget his name, but he also did the stuff for Uncut Gems, and which also has like wall-to-wall driving synth music that I think works so well as a juxtaposition to what they're filming, which is this kind of gritty, real life, handheld camera work stuff, but also, they're using, like I said, editing and the music to kind of also help drive the story, and they do it to such good effect, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things I love synth stuff,
Me
right?
too,
like
baby. John Carpenter, let's go.
It's why Stranger Things, that opening of Stranger Things was so lovely, because it's just got that there's something again about that vibe that I don't know if it's like an 80s thing, and obviously Stranger Things is all about that 80s nostalgia, right? And Carpenter, when we're talking about Carpenter, we're talking about like 70s and 80s, right? So there's something about like the synth, the use of synth, that I don't know what it does. It's because it's like both it like lulls you into, like, because it's like a repeating pattern, so it can like lull you in, but then at the same time you can just add in like a and it kind of just, I don't know what it does. It just it like really affects your mood in so many ways, and I don't know, like we talked about the Batman on the podcast, what was it, last week or whatever it was, and the thing about the Batman for me was I talked about how the sound editing of that film did a lot of work, and I don't just mean the score, but I just meant like it was so loud and it was so overwhelming that it was like pulverizing me, right? And I don't know, like it was almost too much. It was almost that I was overstimulated. And again, maybe this is the same sort of thing. Like I felt like I was being impressed upon, whereas with a film like this, and maybe there's something about a smoothness that accompanies the synth sound aesthetic, that I didn't feel like I was pulverized. The anxiety that I felt didn't come from the fact that I felt like I was being beaten. It was almost like it was like I had internalized it so much, but I had an opportunity to internalize it, which is then what led to like the, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, or oh fuck, are you kidding me? Like that wasn't his brother, like that kind of shit, rather than like almost being forced how to feel because here comes a big hit or a big explosion or a big loud boom, and you're like told how to think and you're told what to feel. This was more like an invitation to feel, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think that's something that's really cool about the synth as well.
Totally. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I love it. I'm just a fan of that. And then I think this also ties into the lighting as well. You get this like these dark reds and like purples and real moody and I think that kind of fits in too as well. It's kind of again very I don't know, is it 70s 80s? Like I feel like it is. It's something like that. You know, it's like when I first saw Drive. I was like, fuck yeah, like Drive is a little bit brighter, but you know, because Nicholas Winding Refn is famously colorblind, so he has to use like primary colors, right, in bright primary colors, or like contrasting colors, because he doesn't really see the grays in between, right? So, but it's the same sort of thing. It's like that type of lighting and moods and things like that kind of map in, and I think that the Safdies use that really well as well, not just in this, but also in Uncut Gems. You know, the lighting was great.
I think the lighting and kind of goes back to you know to use a very overblown cliche, you know, whenever there's like a New York movie, people are like, New York is a character in the movie, baby, you know, and this is a gritty New York crime movie, and there is this kind of subgenre of film that we could get into they are using the city to an effect, and the lights and stuff involved to kind of, you know, really create this atmosphere in this universe, in this mood, which I think, you know, the movies like After Hours, the Martin Scorsese movie, if you want to go watch it, it's just a guy running around the city after hours, having to, you know, getting into all these weird shenanigans and people. My favorite, this isn't probably one of their influences, but a movie kind of like this that's like a comedy version is Quick Change with Bill Murray. Have you ever seen it?
I've never seen it.
It is a must see. It's amazing. It's them. They rob a bank, and then it's them trying to get out of the situation, and all this shit's going wrong. I fucking love it. Everyone go watch Quick Change. But yeah, you could, I think the colors were inspired by that kind of stuff.
I mean, like it does make sense though, right? You can't do. I'd love to see it, but you can't really do like a film in New York, where it's like super bright and like light and happy. You could, and I think that would be kind of funny.
And billboards shining lights in your faces.
And it's tough, and it's a fucking hustle, and it's a concrete jungle, and there's fucking
baby.
You know, big huge inequalities, and it's like the struggle. It's like the fucking human organism and all of its
melting pot of the world.
Like New York City. Yeah, whereas California, the films are always like yellow and bright and sunny, you know? And it's like, well, first of all, that's not all of California, but it's always like LA. Yeah, it's like, here's Venice Beach, and this is California, you know?
It's sand-colored.
So, yeah, exactly. So, in a way, they are serving the context quite well by using the colors, but I think they do it in like a really enhanced way. So you know, like the red, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when you're walking the streets of a city late at night and you're under like a sign for a store, like a laundromat or a sushi store or a barber, and you look at your friends sometimes, or you see your reflection in your mirror and the light's shining on your face, and it's always like this refracted, and it looks very sort of like, maybe we've romanticized it because of movies or something like that, but it kind of always looks a little like magical, like almost surreal or something like that. That's what the color reminds me of. It reminds me of that they're like constantly under the lights of, like, I don't know, some sort of like sign that was made. Like that kind of like reddy, purpley kind of glow, you know? Because it's totally artificial. Because that color doesn't fucking exist as we're like walking around outside in our day-to-day. So that's what it makes me think of. And yeah, totally. But I love it because it just kind of, it makes me feel like you can't get away from humans, right? like there's no nature in this. It's not like, you know, you watch a Terrence Malick film and it's like, you know, they're in fucking Switzerland, like A Hidden Life. Yeah, they're in the fields and there's open, and it's like, oh, I can touch the divine and shit like that. This film, there's no fucking God, there's no divine, there's no outside. You're not escaping, man.
That guy
you are
with
fucking
the LSD
oppressed.
God. The Sprite bottle full.
Yeah. Fuck, man, that was brutal.
Really, just touching on that scene too. Talk about an effective use of props, basically, like in storytelling. Like all it is just somebody pouring a Sprite bottle into somebody's mouth, but my whole theater was just like, oh my god, that was a visceral reaction. But it was, you know, very effective just because of the story they were telling.
my partner had gotten up to go to the bathroom at that point,
no.
and I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Oh my god!" And she's like, "What?" I was like, "He just literally poured a fucking like gulp of LSD into this passed out dude's mouth." So I know, man, it's fucking brutal. So I do know that so let's talk about like some of the themes of this movie. Like, what do we think that this story is talking about? Is this about like brotherly love and protecting your brother? Is this about someone's, you know, overinflated sense of justice? Like, you know, like maybe this is the film that got him Batman, actually, because it's hey, he's a fucking man that is craving justice. But like what do we think? What are the themes that this film is exploring?
Well, obviously, I think we can start about what this movie's about with the very last scene, because the last scene of the movie is what, to me, brings it up from a 9 to a 10, like a must-see classic, which is, you know, when he's back, the bookend of the movie, when he's back at the therapist's office, and then they're explaining what happened to Connie, and then it's him with the credits rolling, hanging out with the other, you know, people at his new home, right? I was sitting there going like, wow, like very touched. Again, not knowing who the actor was or his cognitive abilities, but just being like, wow, this is such a touching way to end this insane, otherwise insane movie. So, and I was like, what am I supposed to get from this part of the film? And I'd like you to answer what you got from it. But to me, it was the fact it was a very simple story. It was 90% of it is, you know, a guy on, you know, that's broken bad, who's, you know, kind of taking advantage of his brother, but then and leading him down a bad path of just a bad egg, but then finding an ounce of of goodness, good time in his heart, you know what I mean, and kind of taking one for his brother, going to prison for what he's done, and then wanting him to have a better life without him. And kind of not really a sacrifice, because he got caught, you know, God knows what he would have done if he didn't, but I guess it's like he learned a little lesson at the end, and so it's like, I don't know, bad people can still find a little goodness in them, and then, you know.
Yeah, and even though he was still surviving, like if he could have kept fighting and kept going, he would have kept going, but he got caught because the justice system, the police system caught up with him. And so the therapist when he's talking, that's right. Yeah. And when the therapist is telling Nick about it, he's basically saying it like this is a good thing. He's in the place where he belongs, and he's taken responsibility for what he's done. And somehow that like is supposed to, according to like the societal idea, that's supposed to like wrap a little bow on this, right? Like you do a bad thing, you do the harm or you do the crime, and then you serve the time, right? And that's a good thing. That levels the scales or something. I did think that there's something interesting. So the film starts obviously with Nick in like that room with that therapist who's having him. He's asking him questions, and he's giving him prompts, and he's like writing down Nick's response to these prompts based on how Nick interprets the meaning of those things. So he gives him a couple of those cliches, right? Like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, what does that mean? Sort of thing. And so the idea is that he's trying to get Nick to somehow scrape beneath the surface to see if he can elaborate, like, what is below the surface? What's really important? What's the meaning of things? And then at the very end, when the therapist is like, okay, so the meaning of all of this is that, you know, if you do a bad thing, you kind of have to pay for it, or there are consequences for your actions, or something along those lines. And then there's this moment after that I think is actually even more important, where Nick is sitting there, and the woman who's leading this class with all of these different people and is asking them to move if they have had certain experiences, or if they like certain things, right? Like if you cross the room if you like chocolate, or cross the room if this, or cross the room if that. And Nick doesn't move. Nick stays there. Nick doesn't move until she says, cross the room if you've ever had like a fight with your family, or if you've ever been let down by your family, and then he moves. right? And so for me, it's almost like the therapist is trying to say, hey, there are consequences for your actions, but Nick still is living with the pain of the fact that his brother let him down.
Yeah.
That he's still hurt. So there is no just like justice wasn't fully ever served, you know, like there is no way to really like heal the wound, you know, perfectly. He's still hurt by it. And this was great because this was before he couldn't express himself, but now he could. And the way that he expressed himself was by making that movement that, yeah, I've been let down by my family before. Something like that. Yeah. So I was kind of struck by that.
Also the consequences for your actions thing is obviously a huge part of the whole structure and story of the movie too. Is just like you said before, like every single decision that they make, at some point something fucks up, and then it leads to another dumb decision that they're going to have to fork in the road that they're going to come to. So that's a huge, you know, theme throughout the film as well.
All right, time for a break. Got to give a shout out to Shudder. Shudder has been a loyal sponsor of this podcast, and we freaking love them. I use Shudder because I love horror films. I love scary things. I love psychological twister, thriller, mind-bending, F you up and maybe make you sleep differently kinds of movies. And if you are like me and you enjoy the supernatural, thriller, horror, etc., then you're going to love Shudder. So they've actually got pretty much everything that you could think of, from original films like Superhost, The Boy Behind the Door, PG Psycho Gorman. They've also got a hit series called Creepshow that's really cool, that's executive produced by Greg Nicotero of The Walking Dead fame, if you all were fans of that. And then, of course, they've got classics, too, like freaking Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then, like, new releases like VHS 94 and Hellbender. So they've really got freaking everything for that you can watch on all your devices, and, like, series, films, classics, new releases, etc., etc. And you can get all of this with their massive expanding library for just $5.99 a month. So if you are like me and you can't get enough horror, scary shit, icky stuff, mind-bending stuff, then make sure you go to Shudder.com and use the code SHOWME. That's Shudder, SHUDDER.com. Use the code SHOWME and you will be able to stream your first 30 days for free. So go to Shudder.com and then use the code SHOWME to get your first 30 days for free at Shudder.com. Code Show me. Go get your creep on. Go get your creep on. All right, back to the show. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room that we talked about in the opening with my first impression. You know, when I first started watching this, I did not know. I thought that maybe this was an actor who was hearing impaired, because you know you see the inner ear, I don't know if it was like a, what's it called, like the inner ear monitor or whatever it is. And I thought that maybe it was an actor that actually was hearing impaired. And then come to find out that no, this actor is not. It's actually Benny Safdie. What do we think about an actor that doesn't have difficulties with cognitive ability or isn't cognitively disabled playing this type of role? Like, so much has been like somebody in my Twitter mentions earlier was talking about fucking like I Am Sam, you know, where it's like
that's
Sean
the worst
Penn
example,
doing.
Yeah,
and it's like obviously that's the bad example. And then someone recently, Norton, I think, was recently getting dragged for playing somebody that was disabled. I can't remember. I don't even know what the role. But I know that he'd been kind of dragged a little bit. So it's like, what do we think? What do we think about this? Is this something like did it trigger you at all? Did you notice it? And then we can talk a little bit about what their defense was. But what do you think about this?
Well. What is their defense? Because we kind of talked about it at the front, like, you know, like when I first saw it, I didn't know, so I just enjoyed the movie as it is, you know, and didn't really think about it, which arguably is a way to enjoy a movie. Is just like, you know, not worrying about the making of the film and just seeing it for what it is, you know, and death of the author kind of thing. But then I know that there's a whole, I know that there is a, you know, there's a whole ethics to this, to casting and representation and whatnot. And I mean, I really don't feel qualified to even know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah, I'll tell you what their defense is because I've got it right here. But Yeah, so this is what they said. They said on casting a character of the brother, Nick, who has an intellectual disability, Josh Safdie said, "We were looking into casting actors with real disabilities, and we were very far along in that process, but we were interviewing a lot of people, but we ended up looking at our schedule, which was very aggressive, and looking at a lot of the scenes that called for intricate blocking and action set pieces. Because of this, in the end, an action movie, we realized that the actor wouldn't have much agency in those scenes. We'd be pushing them around and manipulating, and that morally crossed a line for us." And then Benny jumped in and said, "The last thing we wanted to do was have that character be taken advantage of from behind the camera." So my initial response is at one level, the idea of not wanting to take advantage of somebody is obviously important, and that's great. But I think there's a fine line between saying that and then being patronizing, and then making the decision for somebody else that, oh, they are not capable. And while that might be true to certain extents or lesser extents, the question is what is the process by which somebody else makes a decision on what somebody else's abilities are? There would need to be like a real thorough vetting process, I would think, before you can make such statements. Because if you don't do that, then it is just patronizing, and it is just ableism. I mean, not to be fucking, cliche trying to throw fucking culture war terms out there, but that is I'm not sure that argument always holds. And so again, like, maybe this is out of our depth because neither of us have any sort of cognitive disabilities, but I wonder what that is. And this leads to a bigger point that I'll talk about on the other side. But yeah,
is what makes it ableist the fact that you're saying that they if they didn't have the casting process, if they just kind of go, oh well, no one could do this, when you're saying someone very well could have, that's what would make it ableist, or the very act of trying to act outside of your neurological condition, is that the ableist part?
It's the presumption that somebody else doesn't have agency. So their argument is that like somebody might not have agency in that scenario, and we didn't want to take advantage of them. Obviously, you should always be careful and never want to take advantage of somebody. The question is how do you determine that somebody else doesn't have agency in those situations, right? So I guess then it depends on like who you would hire, right? Like there are people with cognitive impairments that have high degrees of agency, right? And so for me, it just makes me feel like that's a little bit of that they didn't do enough due diligence there, is what I wonder, in trying to actually consult with people in the disabled community and things like that. But does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So it's more about like, it's like if I make a decision for you and I'm like, well, I'm not going to cast Ryan because Ryan's just not, he's just not capable enough to handle this. So I was far along in the process with Ryan, but he's not capable enough. Now that would be a little bit offensive. But if I fundamentally like take away your agency, and then you also are part of a community that has been oppressed because it's just presumed that you don't have the capacity to communicate, or presumed that you don't have the agency. To me, I wonder if that's not just veering too much into a type of like top down, like I know what's best for you type of thing. Even though, but we obviously do have to be careful, and we don't want to take advantage of people that might be that might be in a position to be taken advantage of. So it's like, it's teetering right there. There's a fine line.
Yeah, the fine line is right. Yeah, because I never know what to think when it comes down on situations like this. Because I see it from both ways in a weird way, but I also I was going to bring up too. I have this weird personal experience with this. I made a movie in college, and one of the characters had Down syndrome. In the script, and we went to a school and cast, from like 20 people, somebody, and it was only like 3 scenes, but it was a lot more intense than I anticipated for them. You know what I mean? Like they took it very seriously, the fact that they were in this movie, and it was obviously, which I wanted, but at the same time, these were just kind of simple dialogue scenes and stuff. And I kind of, in hindsight, regretted how I was like, man, we could have prepared this better. You know what I mean? And stuff. And And so I don't know, like that's just my personal experience, but like I being on a movie set is a very intense thing, you know, like for anybody, even if, you know, no matter who you are.
Fuck yeah.
You know?
And this goes to like, I think, the bigger picture. For me, there's like two big issues with this. One, you got to make the movie that you're able to make. And if you can't do the due diligence to make the movie while doing like adequate work in the vetting process, in the preparation process, in the casting process, then maybe that's not the movie you need to make at that point, right? And if you write a script and you've got this great idea that you're like, man, it would be so great if I told the story, and it's a story about like a family, and one of the characters has autism, and but you can't do the appropriate work to get somebody that's going to be in that role that is adequate to what that role demands, then maybe that's not the story you need to tell right now, right? Like maybe you need to wait until you can tell that story, like because I know they were talking about like their timing restrictions, and it's, you know, an independent film and the budget, and we do it in like real locations, and we didn't want to put somebody in, you know, in a prison because that could be overwhelming. I get it, but then maybe that's not the story you need to tell right now. Like was it necessary that he had cognitive disabilities? Like that's one of the things that I get that. And this is like a filmmaking, just a bigger filmmaking, like make the film that you can make right now adequately.
No, I totally. I guess my only counterpoint to that, devil's advocate, would be, you know, as I said before, like I fucking love this movie. I think it's a 10 out of 10, and having seen it cold without knowing anything, I thought it was an amazing performance. So I guess to me, it's like, I guess you're asking me to say like, would I rather the movie we got not exist? You know, because of, you know, for this reason, and which is a perfectly, I'm not saying illegitimate question at all. I mean, it's like, I get, you know, I get what you're asking, you know, it's just kind of, I don't know. It's a difficult thing. What do you think?
It is.
What is your answer to this?
Yeah, well, my answer to this is why I'm a philosopher, is because this just allows us to ask more questions and listen to more people, you know?
You gotta give an answer, a definitive answer.
And so,
do you want good time not
to
exist or not?
Yeah. I think, I'll be honest, where I am right now, I think
in its current state,
I don't think it's necessary that a film like this gets made in this way, and I think that's a bummer. And because
side question: if you had not Googled it at the beginning of the film,
and
had no idea, and then went the rest of the film, was there anything? Was there things in the film that you were like, oh, that was obvious, and this made me kind of weird and uncomfortable? Or do you think that it was that knowledge of the behind the scenes making of the movie that caused the discomfort?
Yeah, it was the knowledge of it, 100%.
So you think as
that
it
opening
is, the
scene
movie works?
I think absolutely, and I think that's interesting, but I almost wonder if that makes it even more
worse. It makes it worse.
Yeah,
I see that too.
Yeah. And so this is where I'm running into the limits of my own like expertise and experience and ability to talk about this. But this is why what I think is important then is what this does is this opens us up to be like, okay, so we know that like films like I Am Sam, or like maybe even What's Eating Gilbert Grape, like that probably just don't get made in that same way anymore, right? And then we have other examples like Peanut Butter Falcon, you know, or there's that like, you know, like in the bad one we have the fucking Sia film that got made like last year or whatever, where like Maddie Ziegler or whatever her name was like called out for playing, you know, a person with autism even though she doesn't have autism, and then Sia was called out and they were like, no, screw you, we're gonna do it. Yeah, and it was like, but you know, then you got a film like Peanut Butter Falcon where they do cast somebody with Downs.
That's a great example,
to play that
actually,
role.
because as we were saying before, you know what I mean, like, or as you were saying, like there's a whole spectrum of you know, people in the rainbow of people with different limits, you know, so like
Yeah.
Like the guy in Peter Falcon was fucking awesome, you know, and like,
So
he was
good.
great.
Yeah.
Like, and obviously they did their due diligence and knew, you know, and I think I saw interviews with him at the time. Like, it was just like, you know, that they went out of their way to make sure he was very comfortable during the filming. And so, you know, like I never meant to insinuate like it can't be done. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was a good example.
Yeah, and then here's the last thing I would want to say. Like, this is obviously like two fucking able-bodied dudes talking about this. Isn't the sole like button on this answer, which is why we need to open up to the community and why it's so important to ask more questions. But the other thing that I think that plays into this, and this is one of my problems. This is one of my problems with like acting. I think a story like Good Time, it shouldn't be about like, oh my God, Robert Pattinson was so good. And it shouldn't be about like, oh my God, Benny Safdie did that so great. He's so great. And it shouldn't just be about Jennifer Jason Leigh fucking killed it, even though she's only on screen for like 7 minutes. Even though all those things are true in the sense that their craft was at a high level. I think we just fucking idolize people in their performance a little bit too much. And I say this as a fucking actor. I teach acting at like, I mean, well, I haven't finished teacher training yet, but at one of like the better schools in the world, you know, like, so it's like
Idolize performance.
Like,
I'm not.
I love performance and I love acting. It's just like, it's like, you know, like when Christian Bale loses weight, it's like, oh my God, that guy is just like, he transforms it. I'm much more interested in serving the story and the narrative to affect people as being primary. Whereas like the actor, not so much that like meat puppets in the Hitchcockian sense, like that he like totally disrespects the actor, but I feel like we just overinflate the people too much. I disagree. You know, like, oh, go ahead.
I mean, I think that their two movies are kind of a good dichotomy of what you're saying, because I like the weird stunt casting stuff. That may be just a preference of mine, but you know, when Quentin Tarantino
like the non-actors, or
well, non-actors is cool. I love that when it works. You know, obviously all this is with the thing that it works, but the understanding that it works, but yeah, like when Quentin Tarantino, you know, the most famous example, John Travolta, oh wow, you know, playing this cool different character, that's fun because you're playing against people's perception. I like when, you know, obviously when it's too stunty or it can feel like a gimmick, but that's just kind of like, you know, case by case basis. However, I will say that there are two movies they've made, they're big ones. Robert Pattinson. Oh wow, Robert Pattinson. He's not just a little pretty
Twilight.
He's not Twilight boy anymore. He's playing a gritty character. Can you do it? Well, when I watched this movie, at first I was skeptical. Like, okay, who the hell does he think he is? But he won me over, and also it was more importantly, I knew he was in good hands with the filmmaking. Like I said before, like I could tell that the movie was great, so this was going to work more than others. But then you have Uncut Gems, and I don't think that movie works as well. For a lot of reasons, you know, script reasons, stuff. I still like it, but we'll talk about the stunt casting with Adam Sandler kind of being, to me, I couldn't help but think, okay, this is Adam Sandler trying to be serious in this role, even though he's surrounded by all these either famous basketball players or just regular people. It somehow didn't work for me or feel as organic. It felt kind of more how we were talking about before, where it felt like them making, you know, Adam Sandler making a lower budget movie, you know. Whereas this, I was on the ride, like in a.
What about Punch Drunk Love, where Adam Sandler is working with PTA, and that's like the first time that he, at least from what I know, where I was like, oh my God, that's Adam Sandler doing like a serious role with like a serious filmmaker.
That's a good one too. That one's a little weirder just because it's so strange, and like I am thinking like I'm pulled out because I'm thinking that it's Adam Sandler, but I'm pulled out the whole time because every scene is just so weird. I'm just like I'm more just amazed when I'm watching that movie about what it is, and then I do get into their love story. I think it's sweet, though bizarre and fucked up, but that movie's different, I would say.
See, for me, I don't feel like they're as gimmicky. Like when you get Jim Carrey doing Truman Show, or when you get Will Ferrell doing Stranger Than Fiction, you know, like those roles don't cause as much friction for me, because I just believe that if you learn improv, and if you're an improv actor, then you can do drama. Like improv to me is the basis of real good performance, because you're open to the moment rather than trying to force your idea onto the script or the scene or the moment or whatever. So for me, it's never surprising when I see a comedic actor who has spent so much time improvising then do a dramatic role, because they just get how to connect with the person, with the moment, to receive what's coming at them rather than block it and ignore it. Like the bad acting for me is when you see people who it's like, I don't know, they've taken a few acting classes, maybe they went to drama school, but they don't know how to be totally affected, and they aren't affectable in the moment. But comedic actors are great at that, because that's why John C. Reilly is such a fucking tremendous actor, because he just moves between both of those spheres, drama and comedy, so effortlessly, right? Or Philip Seymour Hoffman, like, my God, like Twister, his role in Twister as this like crazy weird tornado hunter, from that to Boogie Nights to Capote to fucking Synecdoche, New York. I mean, he can do, because he just gets the moment to moment being present sort of thing, you know. So for me, I never really feel it. Like the Robert Pattinson one, going from Twilight to Cosmopolis to The Rover to Good Time, that's different because he's been branded by the media as the Twilight guy. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think it's like, no, I'm a fucking serious actor. So that to me is cool. And it's like it's like a person trying to prove something. But I think what I'm more getting at is like, I don't know, humans, we just love to fucking worship. You know, if we're not worshiping God, we're worshiping fucking actors. And I don't know.
Who's worshiping the actors from Good Time? I guess I'm trying to find the...
It's just like this subtle, like, oh my God, like when someone can transform themselves and they can do the role of playing somebody with cognitive disabilities so well. Good. It's like, oh, yeah, but it's like, fuck, man, just do your job. That's memorize acting. Your lines. Memorize your fucking lines. Hit your mark, and stop trying to pat yourself on the back for being like, oh my God, I just totally transformed myself. I don't know. I just feel like actors we're so self-indulgent, and I'm around it all the time, so I'm really sensitive to it. And I say this as somebody who when I was in my teens, I idolized fucking Brando, Sean Penn, and Daniel Day-Lewis. Mm-hmm. Those were like, and then of course like James Dean. I used to have a fucking James Dean poster above my bed, you know. But like that was like to me the pinnacle of acting, and it was like, how much can you torture yourself to get into the character and transform yourself? Anymore, I'm much more about like, acting is the art of showing the different sides of you that society don't allow you to show in connection with the story, in the truth of the moment. So like, what you love about Robert Pattinson isn't that he became some guy from New York, even though he's a British guy. It's that he found that part of him. You know, what's the part of him, the kind of beautiful part of him that he was able to lean into and express in a different way? Those emotions and those feelings of protection and I'll do anything for my family. That's Robert Pattinson's heart on display. Like, not the 1/10 of Robert Pattinson that we get because he's the Twilight boy. It's the other sides of Robert Pattinson that we don't get to see. And that's what makes the character so seductive and so interesting. That's what I'm interested in. So, I don't know.
From. Real quick, best actor working today. Question mark. Go.
My favorite, the guy that I like have total talent crush on, is Mads Mikkelsen.
All right, that's a good answer. I'm gonna go Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Number one. I'm psyched when he's in a movie. I'm like, I know that I'm gonna enjoy, the character at least. He put something into it.
Yeah, I like, my favorite movies of the last few years have been Mads Mikkelsen films. Like Another Round is that, and then The Hunt. If you guys haven't seen The Hunt out there listening right now, you want to talk about a film that makes you feel things. Ugh, it's gonna tie you up in fucking knots. I still feel icky.
Be careful to say not the new one, not the Blumhouse one.
No.
With where they're hunting rednecks and stuff.
No, 2012, Thomas Vinterberg, Mads Mikkelsen.
Movie.
It's in Danish. Yeah. It was on Netflix for a long time. I don't know if it still is, but okay. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Should we talk about this announcement, bro?
Yeah, I know. End of an era. It's a sad day in Show Me the Meaning land, but hey, like we said at the beginning, all good things come to an end. somebody said that.
And a lot of times, the caterpillar has to die so that it can become a butterfly.
Exactly.
And so new things are going to hopefully come out of this. But as Ryan said at the beginning, we have 3 shows left. So it's actually this one and then 2 more shows. We're going to go through March, and then starting April, Show Me the Meaning and Culture Binge are actually, and really all of the Wisecrack podcasts are going to kind of be vaulted. Corporate has decided to go, we've been purchased. I know people who have been with us for a while. There have been different sales and whatnot of the Wisecrack brand. And the corporate community has decided to go in different directions. And, it sucks. We're bummed, like, to be honest.
Yeah.
I love this. It's for no other reason than I get to watch cool movies and talk to cool people every fucking week and share that with the community. And as silly as it sounds, I feel like in some ways we're contributing to helping people think about the world better and think about their art better.
I think you are.
No,
I think you're doing a great job of that, Austin. I'm here just observing. But this has been one of the highlights of my week for 5 years too. It's like, I get to watch a movie this weekend. Either one I haven't seen or one I probably have seen, and more importantly, I get to see what my buds think about it. So this has been great. And then also we get to break it down at the same time,
Yeah, and learn about different perspectives and stuff like that about how to even interpret these fucking things. Yeah. So we don't really know exactly what the future is going to hold, but obviously, give us a follow on our socials. Follow Raymond on his social, which is @Crematoria. You can check me out at Austin_Hayden on Instagram. On Twitter, Austin_Hayden. Then on Insta, it's AUS_HAY. Ryan, where do people find you so they can learn about what you got going on?
Who knows what announcements we might have in the future or what we might be doing. We could still be talking about movies in some form or another soon. At Ryan Shorts, you can check me out there on Twitter, on Instagram, and on YouTube. And Ryan's Game Show. Go check out that thing I made a while ago too.
Yeah, and there's been some talk about, maybe doing some streaming versions of something on the main YouTube channel. We don't really know exactly what that means, but, stick around. We are going to be fleshing this out over the coming weeks, and we'll make some more announcements as each podcast gets released. But as I said, we got a couple more left, so freaking tell your friends, get people involved, and then come check out our socials so that you can keep you up to date with what we've got going on, not just with Wisecrack, but also maybe going off and doing some other independent things, but maybe movie related, something like that. We don't know yet, so that's all we can say right now. But yeah. So
that speaking of the last two, that last one is going to be a doozy. We haven't planned it all out yet, but all we know is doozy. Okay, it's on my calendar, doozy. And like I said before, I have looked forward to you showed me the meeting this whole time, Austin. So I would like to give Austin a special round of applause for being so knowledgeable about everything in the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you. A lot of this is me bullshitting, so I appreciate you.
I've loved hearing the bullshit. I eat it up.
Professional bullshitter. That's me. Yeah. All right, send us out of here.
All right. Goodbye from Hollywood, California. We've been having a good time today at Show Me